Welcome back. It's now time for us to talk about that new move by NERC, Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, that announced that it's shutting down its forum offices in some states and handing over their operations to those states' respective electricity commissions. So more like unbundling that sector so that it's decentralized for, I guess, efficiency and effectiveness. How does this impact the availability of electricity in our homes and for our businesses? How does it affect the cost of electricity, the issue of investment in that sector? All of this issue, potpourri of all of them is what we're talking about. Mr. Okorie joins us on the program. He's an energy expert. He joins us via Zoom. Mr. Okorie, thank you so much for coming on the program. Prince Will Okorie, thank you, sir, for joining us. Not via Zoom, I should say, from our Abuja studio, sir.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's begin building up from this particular release from NERC. I'm looking at that statement again that was released just a few days ago. The commission saying that it has officially transferred regulatory authority to Enugu, Ekiti, Kogi, Edo, Ondo, Imo, and Oyo State in accordance with the new Electricity Act 2023. For those who don't understand what all of this means, maybe you begin to, from there, to explain to us what does it mean to transfer all of these regulatory authorities to them. Let's begin with the basics.
Well, you know that Section 34 of the Electricity Act 2023 gave powers to Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission as the regulator of the power sector to handle a whole lot of issues. They license the distribution companies, they monitor the way they operate, they are supposed to sanction and other things. Specifically, Section 34(1)(f) said regulation should be fair and balanced to the consumer, the investor, and other stakeholders. So there's enormous powers given to the regulator in the sector. So when they say they are now transferring those powers to state electricity commissions, well, it's something they've decided to do. But again, my view is that we need to study how far and how well has the regulator performed before transiting power to the state electricity commissions. And are the state electricity commissions stable now to be able to handle complaints? The forum offices were set up to handle electricity complaints that the distribution companies cannot handle. For me, I don't believe in that forum offices, because if the regulator is there to monitor what is happening in the sector and have the power to sanction the distribution companies, we expect that the regulator should really stand to insist that the distribution companies treat consumers well, rather than creating an avenue that will give the distribution companies opportunity not to address complaints that are brought by consumers. Why will the distribution company not address the complaints? And you are telling the distribution company, telling the consumer, that if you take a complaint to a distribution company, you should wait for 15 working days. When it's not resolved, you now take it to NERC forum. No punishment for the distribution company for failing to address the complaint within 15 working days. In other words, they are creating room for the distribution companies to treat consumers with levity. But look at it this way. Assuming the consumer is the one that is flouting the rules, the distribution company has the power to deal with the consumer immediately. What do I mean by this? If the distribution company says the consumer has bypassed meter now, they have the power to punish that consumer, give them fine without going to court, without referring to NERC. But here, when it concerns the consumer, NERC says the consumer should write to the distribution company and wait for 15 working days. If after 15 working days nothing is done, they should bring it to NERC forum office. The NERC forum office will take a long period again. Sometimes you can't even get justice there. There was one we handled in Abuja here in Pape. A man's land was taken by the distribution company to install transformer for 12 good years. No compensation, no settlement, no discussion with this man against the right of way policy in the Electricity Act. Now, when this man took up the matter, what happened? After he waited and wrote several complaints and then went to NERC, the distribution company did nothing. There was no punishment on them for not doing anything. And the matter was now taken to NERC Forum. NERC Forum, after a period, wanted to even judge this matter in the absence of the man. They went and then arranged with the distribution company and a group of people to now judge that the man is not the owner of the land. The matter came back to us and we had to petition NERC again, requesting that fair hearing should be given to that person. And when this fair hearing, they created a platform for us to attend. We went. After NERC judgment, NERC Forum judgment, within the period to enforce that judgment, nothing was done by the distribution company. The next thing we had, after a long period, is the NERC now writing a letter to say we should go to court. You can see the injustice in this. Now, if you had known that it's going to court that will solve the problem, why do you now set up Forum Office? What is the Forum Office doing? And why is it that the ruling of the Forum Office was not abided by? That matter is still hanging. That consumer is threatening, is planning to see if he can go to court. And going to court now is against NERC and the distribution company. Because the rules of NERC should... Yes?
Yeah, sorry. Pardon me.
Yes.
Beyond addressing complaints of consumers and managing the electricity market, I believe there are other implications to this transfer of forum offices to states, a regulatory authority to states. And I want you to speak to what may be other implications because of how critical the power sector is. We've had series of grid collapses, securing infrastructure, security of those infrastructure, grid collapses, the challenge of generation of power, transmission and distribution. So on these three fronts, what would be the implications following this transfer of regulatory oversight to states? Would it mean, I want you to explain, would it mean that allocation for the power sector in that regard will now also go to the states? And what should we expect from states in terms of managing these critical infrastructure, in terms of security, in terms of maintenance, such that we don't experience collapses and all the other gamut of responsibilities that come with managing the power sector?
You recall I told you that you mentioned forum offices. So I was not telling you about forum offices, but apart from that, let's now look at what you are asking of. In the first place, what is the consumer enumeration? Before you hand over to states, there are basic things that need to be done. They've not been done. You don't run away. This is like running away from responsibility. For me, that's what I believe. Because if you want to, just like I said last time I was in this studio, I said, Nigerian public enterprises were being wrongly managed. And rather than investigate the cause of wrong management and punish the people that committed the failure or caused the failure of public enterprises, we shifted to privatization. Today we are suffering on privatization. Now the privatization of the power sector that brought NERC into being, we need to look at it critically. Just the question you've asked now. For instance, at the inception of privatization, when the companies took over in 2013, Nigerian Electricity Liability and Management Company was set up with a mandate to handle assets and liabilities of the Power Holding Company of Nigeria that was existing before privatization. Let's start from there to now look at NERC. What has NEMCO done? They were to last for 5 years from 2013. But up to now, they are there. What are they doing? Now, the corruption in the sector is too high. The extortion and oppression of consumers is too high. And then what NERC is doing is to shield Nigerians from really looking at the realities on ground and then implementing these policies the way it should favor Nigerians. Look at the unjustified increase. The unjustified increase in bills, unjustified increase in meter prices. This was a sector that NERC recommended the 11 discos. They came up with meter access provider. Nigerians have not gotten a report on how many consumers paid for meter under meter access provider. Nigerians have not gotten a report on energy refund to those who paid for meter access provider, which was an initiative of NERC. NERC initiated network expansion investment policy. We Nigerians are not aware of the investment of consumers in the sector and then investment of the distribution companies. NERC approves OPEC and CAPEX for distribution companies. Nigerians are not aware of how these CAPEX and OPEX have been utilized by the distribution companies that NERC is regulating. Now, look at NEMCO. Okay, 2020, 59 billion was provided as a pilot scheme on the National Mass Metering Program, which the federal government said that 200 billion was earmarked for it. It will be implemented in 3 phases. The first phase of 59 billion that was shared to the 11 discos in 2020. This year, 2024, what they've been able to pay back is only 7.something billion. Where is the rest of the money? And nobody hears NERC talk about this policy anymore. And then they want to abandon these things without explaining to Nigerians and now shift it to state electricity markets. Why will the state electricity markets work? Today, do you have consumer enumeration? How many consumers are paying bills in this country among the franchise areas of the distribution companies? None is done. So we cannot be jumping and celebrating state electricity market. Who will invest? Before you invest in state electricity market, you want to know what is the profit level you will make. How much do consumers pay as bills? How many consumers are metered? So the money that comes from unmetered consumers, where is it accounted for?
So if I get you,
questions that need to be answers need to be found for these ones. Now let me tell you this: not just NERC, the federal government under President Bola Tinubu need to investigate what is NEMCO doing. 94 billion naira was used in August by NEMCO to hold training for 10 board members in Nigerian Electricity Liability Management Company. 94 million naira. And you are increasing tariff for consumers and saying there is no liquidity in the sector. And the Minister for Power is the chairman of that board. So how? Okay, look at this. The lands, do you know that under Decree 24 of 1972, lands were to be provided for electricity facilities free by the states? Are you aware that Power Holding Company of Nigeria did not provide any agreement with the state for them to pay them grand rent? And BPE has no Bureau of Public Enterprises that manage transition to privatization, has not provided any evidence of the fact that the Power Holding Company of Nigeria was to be paid a land compensation in the name of grand rent. But do you know that NEMCO has paid 41 billion naira to states between last year and this year? How did that emerge? The 41 billion naira you paid under grand rent, and states provided these lands as their own contribution to enable Power Holding Company provide electricity for them. So how come you now came up and started paying 41 billion of Nigeria's money to that? Now look at it again. How much has been generated from the assets of the Power Holding Company, both abroad in Nigeria? How much has been generated? And how has that money been utilized? Where was it put into? Imagine where 2 billion naira was used to pay eight organizations what they call legal liability by NEMCO. Imagine where payments are made to companies without documentation. Or companies are paid money without documentation in NEMCO. And the more confusing one now is NEMCO is trying to join in the so-called state electricity markets. You mentioned about 6 states.
I wonder if you can back up some of these things that you're saying with evidence, particularly because, you know, members of the board and leaders of these organizations that you're talking about are not here to defend them. But if I get you correctly, Mr. Okori, what you're saying is that if these levels of consumer enumeration, metering, and, you know, all other related issues have not been taken care of, then we cannot even begin to talk about the state's ability to manage, maintain, grids, the national grid, securing them and all of that. But talk to to us now about the preparedness of these state forum offices following this handover to take on these responsibilities.
My sister, I should equally ask you. I should ask you. The states that they're asking to set up forum offices, have they started? How many of these states have a distribution company serving them now? They are not there yet. And you are not telling me whether the companies, I have evidence to prove what I'm saying. I challenge you, the media, do investigative journalism. Do investigative journalism on NEMCO. I'm saying this before national television. I'm saying it because we are not happy. I heard Association for Public Policy Analysis. And when you look at policies, we are looking at policies based on public interest. How can Nigerians be made to pay from 68 naira per kilowatt hour, paying 227 naira on the claim that there's no liquidity in the sector? Meanwhile, the ones that has been put in there are lavishly used and wasted, and we'll keep quiet. We need to see what is happening. Right. Now, you're talking of state electricity markets. The state electricity markets, what is the foundation that has been laid before you are now transferring forum offices to them? You need to prove, I mean, the states you are asking to go and do this business, how many consumers are in those states? Okay, you talked about grid collapse and security of the infrastructure. Now, ask NERC, and ask NERC, ask the police, ask Civil Defense Corps, what is their program towards implementing Section 209 to Section 224 of the Electricity Act 2023 that deals with offenses and penalties. And that section deals with electricity theft, meter theft, vandalism, sale of vandalized
if I may come in. Just a moment, because of time. You have a lot to say. That means this conversation is far from over. For the people who have been hearing you say NEMCO, I want to bring them up to speed by saying it's Nigeria Electricity Liability Management Company. We're going to extend an invitation to them so that they will be able to respond to some of the allegations you've leveled against them. It's only fair to do that. But I can see you have a lot of information, and that's why we brought you here to talk about this. But as we begin to wind down on this particular issue, it should be celebrated, at least at face value, that administrative and oversight responsibility is being, call it load shedding of the federal government, NERC now decentralizing it to the state. So my question would be, what do you think the states can do to properly prepare for this responsibility? Because apparently it looks like NERC hadn't done, from your submission, NERC hadn't done basic housekeeping, and we're not sure of how ready the states are. In 2 minutes.
Well, what I will tell you, we celebrated privatization on the premise that service delivery will enhance better payments for services. But today, almost how many years, from 2013 till today, almost 12 years, we are still complaining, seeing worse situation than it was before. So that is the kind of celebration you want us to celebrate on the state electricity markets. But I want to tell you, there are basic things that need to be done. Number one, we need to investigate what has been done by NERC at the national level, how effective and efficient they've been in handling regulation of the power sector. We need to look at that so that we can use it to develop a template for the states. Yes, state electricity market will be a good thing to do, but it has to be done properly. Otherwise, there will be problems. Okay, number one. Number two, there has to be proper consumer enumeration in the states to know how many consumers are we looking at. When you know the consumer enumeration, you will not begin to know the value, the level of revenue to be generated. Then you know the profitability of investing in the sector. If an investor doesn't get that data, how will he invest? Three, what are the infrastructures in the states? What is the infrastructure on ground? How many the distribution companies provide? How many did the states provide? How many did the communities provide? You are aware that World Bank, GIZ, European Union, and all manner of international donor organizations have been giving so much money to the power sector. The Obasanjo administration gave money, Yar'Adua administration put in money, Jonathan administration put in money. All these monies that we are putting in the sector Where are they? What is the impact of these monies?
Mr.
So if we must go to the...
No, just land on your thoughts. Just 10 seconds.
So if we must go into state electricity market, there has to be a thorough review of the sector. Check corruption in that sector, come up with a template that will provide a clear direction for whoever is going to invest. Then check consumer abuses. Because at the state level, it might be chaotic. If you go to the states and start exploiting the people at the state, the way it has been done from the national level. So for instance, you are giving us increasing the tariff, you are increasing meter prices, no consultation with the consumers. The minister will pronounce, and like minister has said, government is providing 1.8 million.
Mr. Corey,
what has happened to the national mass metering program?
We're totally out of time. I like that last point you raised, Mr. Corey, and that last point of I'm still at a loss as to why people are just migrated from one band to the other without their knowledge or without their understanding. I even have a question to that effect. We don't have the time to answer. Maybe your thoughts are also aligning with what the EFCC boss has said, that if we know the level of corruption in the power sector, Nigerians will cry. So we invite NEMCO, we also invite NERC, so that we put all of these things on the table with them, let them answer for themselves. But thank you, Mr. Prince Wilokore, energy expert, also consultant for the House of Reps. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a quick break now. When we come back, it'll be time to, go to the softer side of things, like would like to say, make up artistry. It's in levels. There are levels to these things. The ones that give us the visual effects that you like to see in movies. One of the persons behind that artistry is right here with us to break it down how it is done. Join us again.